Hey there, and welcome to exercise number 57. In this one, we need to write a function named mergeIntervals that receives two parameters. The first one is an array of objects representing intervals of numbers, and we're going to call this parameter intervals. Each object has the following props: from, the smallest number in the interval, to, the biggest number in the interval, and then a numbers property, which is an array of numbers in ascending order. All numbers are between from and to. The intervals are not overlapping and are sorted ascending based on the from prop. Now, the second parameter is another array of intervals following the same structure, and we're going to call this one newIntervals. So basically, we have two props that share the same structure, intervals and newIntervals. Now, the function should merge both intervals into one and return it. And it's important that the returned interval array follows the same rules as the parameter ones. So basically, the returned array should be non-overlapping, should be sorted ascending based on the from prop, and should have these properties, right? An array of objects with those properties. Below we have an example, so let's look at that. If our intervals array is this one, right, from 10 to 21, and we get 5 numbers here, and then from 50 to 51, and we get 2 numbers, from 100 to 110, and we get 11 numbers here, and our newIntervals is this one, right, from 5 to 15, 3 numbers, from 500 to 700, 3 numbers. This is the expected output, so they're sorted ascending by the from prop. So first the one that starts at 5 and ends at 21, and now we have 8 numbers here. Why? Because we have 5 between 10 and 21, and another 3 between 5 and 15, so we merge them. Then we have another interval 50, 51, then another one 100, 110, and finally the last one from 500 to 700. Now, if you want to solve this exercise for yourself, click on the link in the description. If not, keep watching and we're going to solve it together. I'm going to go here into the right side, into the code area. And the first thing I want to do is let's create a new variable mergedIntervals, and I'm going to just put all the intervals here, right? So I'm just going to put the old intervals, intervals and newIntervals, I'm going to put them here. Now let's sort this one, because one of the rules is that the intervals are non-overlapping and sorted ascending based on the from prop. So let's do that. I'm going to say mergeIntervals dot sort, and I'm going to say interval 1, interval 2, and let's return, and I want them ascending based on the from prop. So I'm going to say interval 1 dot from minus interval 2 dot from. And let's put a comment here, ascending based on from prop. Okay, now that we have this, like we're halfway there, let's say, right? We have a new array of intervals sorted, but some of them may be overlapping. Like if we look here in the example, we can see we have the interval from 10 to 21, and then here we have from 5 to 21. We have from 10 to 21 and another one from 5 to 15. And the output is actually from 5 to 21, right? We take this interval, this one overlaps with this one, so we merge them and we get a new interval. So I'm going to use a while loop. And let me just first create an index. This one's going to be 0. Let's say while index is smaller than mergedIntervals.length. And you know what? Let me just rename this, because we have mergeIntervals and mergedIntervals, and it's very easy to do like a typo and stuff like that. So let's call it return, a result. So now going back to the while loop. So I'm going to iterate through all the intervals, and I'm going to check, is the current one overlapping with the next one? If yes, I want to merge them. If not, I don't care. So I'm going to do something like this. If are intervals overlapping of result of index and result of index plus 1, right? So if those two are overlapping, then I'm going to merge them. Otherwise, I don't have to do anything, right? They're not overlapping. I just leave them as they are. Now, we don't have the rIntervals overlapping function, so let's create it. So I'm going to create function rIntervals overlapping, interval 1, interval 2, and this one's going to return a Boolean if those two intervals are overlapping. And what's that condition? So if the first interval starts before the second one ends, and the first one ends after the second one starts. I think this is the solution. So let's just double check it. So if the first interval starts before the second one ends, and let's do here, let's say I have the interval 0, 10, and the other interval is 5, 20, right? So the first one starts before this one ends. That makes sense, because otherwise if it starts after it ends, then they're not overlapping. And then if this one ends after this one starts, correct. So in this case, the first interval starts at 0 and it starts before 20, that's correct. And it ends after the first one. Yeah, so this if here is correct. Okay, going back to our code, now that we have this function, so we're going back into the while, and I just realized that if we use index with less than this one, then this one's not going to work because this one's going to be undefined. So I'm going to say smaller than -1, right? So I'm going to do this. Now, if I'm here, I'm just going to do index plus plus. So I'm not going to change anything, but if I'm here, I'm going to merge them. So I'm going to say const, let's say merge the interval. Actually, let's call it new interval. So it's going to start, the value is going to be the smallest one. So math.min between the first interval dot from and the second interval dot from, right? So it's going to be the smallest one, and then it's going to end, and it's going to be the bigger one of the values. So here I'm going to have math.max, and this one's going to be 2. And now the values, which are numbers, I'm just going to put all of them. So I'm going to say numbers is going to be result, and actually, let's result.index, let's create here a variable. I'm going to say const current interval is result of index, and let's const next interval is result of index plus 1, and I'm going to say current interval here, and this one's going to be new interval, next interval, sorry. So from is going to be the minimum value between the current interval from and next interval from. 2 is going to be the maximum value between the 2 of the first interval and the 2 of the next one. And then the numbers are going to be all the numbers inside. So current interval dot numbers, and then current next interval dot numbers. Now another rule is that those numbers need to be sorted ascending, right? It says here, if we look, an array of numbers in ascending order. So let's sort them. I'm going to say new interval dot numbers dot sort. Say number 1, number 2, and I want to sort them ascending, so it's going to be number 1 minus number 2. Okay, so now that we have this interval, I want to remove the current one and the next one, and I want to replace it with this one. So I'm going to say here, we're going to modify the array. So I'm going to say result.splice, and it's going to be index, and I'm going to delete 2 values, and I'm going to insert the new interval. And then I'm going to do continue. I don't want to increase the index. I want to check the newly created interval with the next one, and so on. Okay, I think we can test our function. So let's do console log merge intervals off. And let me just copy one from here, and then copy this one from here. And we get undefined, yeah, because we didn't return anything. So I'm going to say return result. And we get 4 intervals. Is this correct? Yes. So the first one from 5 to 21, this looks good. Second one, 50, 51, it looks good. Third one, 100 to 110, looks good. Finally, 500 to 700, looks good. Now let's test our solution. And voila, it works. Cheers, and see you in the next one.